So welcome to the Hub Certification Workshop. This is a step-by-step SWUC certification process being presented by the North Carolina Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses. So I'm John Gunther. I'm the compliance officer. I've been with the office since 2015. I do a number of things in the office. I do some training. I do reporting. So people have to report into us, and I collect that information and I put it together and I put out the annual reports and quarterly reports. And I also do some work on the construction side of the house in helping find vendors appropriate for various state level projects that are Hub certified. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to do a little overview. We're going to talk about Hub certification generally. We're going to talk about EVP registration. We're going to talk about the statewide uniform certification program application and reciprocity, if that's applicable to you. We're going to talk about required documentation, finding Hub vendors, Hub vendor responsibilities, and finding opportunities to develop your business and doing business with the state. So there's a lot of alphabet soup in the work that we do in the Hub office, and you may hear a lot of these acronyms out in the world, and some of them might be confusing. So we wanted to give kind of a heads up of these are a lot of the acronyms that you might see. We don't necessarily use a lot of these throughout this presentation, but when you're out in the world, you might see some of these. So SWUC is the statewide uniform certification. That is the Hub certification, but the general statute language says statewide uniform certification. So that's where SWUC comes from. Hub is historically underutilized businesses. MBE/WBE is minority/women business enterprise. DBE stands for disadvantaged business enterprise. There is also another acronym for DBE that's a different one, and if it comes up, we'll talk about that, but they're different things. SDB, small disadvantaged business. SDVOSB, service disabled veteran-owned small business. WOSB, is woman-owned small business. WBENC, which we frequently just refer to as WeBank, is Women's Business Enterprise National Council. That's a certifying entity at the national level for women-owned businesses. CVMSDC, and there's also an NMSDC, the national level, but CVMSDC is the Carolinas Virginia Minority Supplier Development Council. And there is a national version of that. And they do certification of minority businesses in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia on the private side. The Hub office does certification. We are the official certifying entity for the state. So in order to count towards utilization goals for the state, you must be Hub certified. We do have reciprocity with CVMSDC, but you need to still go through the Hub certification process for that to be counted towards Hub participation. So what is Hub? The Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses covers the statewide uniform certification program launched in 2009. So we administer that program. The certification application process is 45 to 90 days once we have everything that we need. So after the full application has been submitted, it's been signed, and we have all the documents that we need, that's when that time frame kind of starts. We don't get started on determining if somebody is eligible until we have everything that we need to make that determination. There's no fee associated with it, so we don't charge any fee. It's a state program, so there's no dollars that change hands between you and us to get that certification. You must be a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident to apply. Hub certification categories. We have 4 main categories: minority, female, disabled, and disadvantaged. And within the minority category, we certify as Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and American Indian. And we certify in that order. So we look at minority first, And if somebody falls into that category, then they're certified as that category. For example, Hispanic. Um, if somebody is Hispanic, we certify them that way. We don't go and certify also the other categories. So you only ever have one hub certification category, even if you might fall into multiples. So we start off with minority, and then if they don't fall into minority, we look at the gender. So then we might certify a company as female. And if not female and not minority, then we look at disabled and we look at disadvantaged. And there's not really a priority of before, like disabled before disadvantaged, but it's more common that disabled will be seen than disadvantaged. Ownership and control. At least 51% of the company must be owned and managed day-to-day operations by one or more persons um, uh, in the categories listed above: the Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female, disabled, or disadvantaged. We do have two self-identified categories for goods and services only. These are disabled business enterprise. That's the other DBE that I mentioned before, and nonprofit work centers for the blind and severely disabled. Those two categories are nonprofits, and those are the only ones that we count dollars for nonprofits. The Hub Office does not certify nonprofits as hubs. We do not certify nonprofits as hubs. We only certify for-profit companies. So the Hub Office promotes diversity and inclusion in state government procurement and contracting. The main roles of the Hub Office include hub certification, encouraging the use of historically underutilized businesses, providing business development services to hub vendors, collecting reports on construction spending and goods and services purchases for North Carolina state and local government entities. We have goals for spending. The goal is 10% for construction. That's in a general statute. 143, 128.2, if you really want to know, is the statute that sets the goal for 10% specifically for state agencies. Local governments have a little bit more flexibility, but if there's any state funds associated with it and it's more than $100,000 project, 10% is the goal. Excuse me. On goods and services spending, that goal of 10% is set in executive orders, and it is continuing in the current governor's executive order on Hub. Spending is reported to the Hub Office, and we have different ways of doing that, but that is something that the agencies that spend money with Hubs report to us. That's not something that a Hub vendor needs to worry about in terms of making sure they report. That's not on the construction side. They need to worry about it a little bit more because there are good faith effort affidavits and documents that they have to submit at the time of bidding and throughout the process to make sure that they're using the hub vendors they said they were going to use and that we understand the spending that they have. On goods and services, hub vendors don't really have a lot to do in terms of reporting to us beyond their initial bid. So and a lot of that is something that happens behind the scenes and you wouldn't even need to be aware of it. But only certified hub vendors count towards hub dollars and hub participation percentages. So on construction spending, this was from fiscal year 18-19. We just finished fiscal year 19-20, but we don't have all of the data yet on the goods and services side. So that's why this is still fiscal year 18-19 dollars. So total spending for construction was just over $500 million, and spending with hubs was just over $100 million. So the percentage with hubs on the construction side is 20%, and it fluctuates. Sometimes it's a little bit lower than that. We have had it up into the 30% range before. 20% is fairly typical for the last few years. Goods and services spending, we get spending reported to us from state agencies, community colleges, state universities, and school systems. And total spending for fiscal year 18-19 was $7 billion, with $367 million spending with hubs. So that's 3 times as much hub spending, but a whole lot more total spend. So that percentage comes out to 5.21%. And we have been in that 5% range for a while. And you'll notice that the goal is 10%. So we are in need of hub vendors on the goods and services side, and to make sure that we have enough hub vendors that they can bid and win on projects, um, so that we can increase that percentage. A lot of that is making sure that the agencies that are reporting to us, that they are aware that they need to be including hub vendors on their projects, and that they need to reach out to hub vendors. And have been working with them for quite a while to increase that and make it a little easier for them to find hub vendors. So what does the state of North Carolina buy? We buy a lot of different things. You can break it out into broad types. We buy services, we buy commodities, we do a lot of spending on state term contract. If you'll notice from fiscal year 18-19, about 18% of our spending was with term contracts. So that's something that is statewide, and any state agency can use it. The price is the same regardless of where the agency is in the state. We do have about a dozen hub vendors who are on state term contracts, including FSI, which is Forms and Supply. They're a female-owned company out of Charlotte, and they provide office supplies statewide. So that is for school systems and state agencies. Anybody who orders office supplies for them, that's a fairly easy way for them to get some hub participation. It also is a good benefit to FSI. It's helped them grow their business as well in being able to get on a state term contract. So we are always looking for hub vendors to try to see if they can provide state term contract services. If you're a new company, it may not be the kind of thing that you want to try to jump into, because it is a statewide program, and you need to be able to provide it, whatever the term contract is for, to anybody at the levels that they need, anywhere in the state. So it's a good way of building some business, but it's not like necessarily a good tactic for somebody who's just starting out. You need to have a little bit more depth and strength in your company to be able to take on a term contract. So the kinds of services that we use a lot of medical care, contract nurses and doctors. Cleaning services has been pretty big for a while in the hub space, but recently with COVID-19 and the need to sanitize things, that's been very important as well. Landscaping, information technology support. There's a lot of different things that we do on services. On the commodity side, the physical things that the state purchases includes personal protective equipment. So we're always looking for masks and gloves and those kinds of equipment. We're looking for medical supplies, cleaners and disinfectant, computers, vehicles, furniture, air purifiers, space heaters, cameras, refrigerators, freezers. And we were looking for this all this information before COVID-19 hit. So a lot of the spending that we're doing now does revolve around COVID-19 in terms of commodities and making sure that we've got PPE that's appropriate and enough. But we have needed those goods before COVID-19, and we'll need them after it as well. So the certification process, there's a 3-step process to get certified as a hub. The first step is to register an EVP. That's the North Carolina Electronic Vendor Portal. You need to register for both IPS and hub, and e-procurement is optional. A lot of times, anybody who's in the construction field will just register for IPS and hub. They won't worry about e-procurement. E-procurement, if you are doing any kind of goods or service that's not specifically construction oriented, then you probably do want to register for e-procurement, because that would allow the agency that you're working with to send you electronic purchase orders, and a way to communicate back and forth with them on those needs. The link for EVP is listed there, and you can, if you need to, you can contact us and say, hey, what is that link again? And we can always share that. But it is in the presentation that you've got, so hopefully you won't need to do that. Second step is to submit a completed and signed statewide uniform certification application. So we'll go through the application in a little bit, but you got to make sure that when you're completing it, everything is covered. Don't leave blanks, because blanks just lead to questions and slowing down the application. So the link to the Hub certification page and the application is listed there. And there are a couple of different kinds of application, but the statewide uniform certification is our main one. We have a couple of reciprocity ones as well that we'll talk about. Submit the required documents. So there are required documents based on the type of application that you submit. And so when we mention certification, it lasts for 4 years. At the end of that 4 years, you come back and you do a recertification process. And it's pretty much the same as this. You still need to go into EVP, but you just update the years of ownership for that when you're recertifying, and update any contact information that you need to, or anything like that. And then there's a recertification application that is fairly simple, and documents that you have to provide, but it's not as many documents as you do need the first time around when you're certifying. So if you've never been certified before, you have more documents to submit than if you are recertifying. What can you register for in EVP? The required items are the Interactive Purchasing System, IPS, that allows vendors to receive email notifications and procurement and construction opportunities based on what you designate in the commodity and construction codes in EVP. And we'll kind of look at those a little bit later. So you will get an email for any projects that's associated with the commodity codes that you choose. You also need to register for Hub, for historically underutilized business, to allow vendors to request certification. And it will ask some information about the kind of certification that you think you fall into, which Hub category, and then it will ask information about the owners of the business. We need to know all the owners of the business, their gender, their race, if they have any disability or things like that. And we should see that later on. And again, optional and encouraged, but not required, is North Carolina e-procurement. Please note that there is a 1.75% fee on purchase orders placed for commodities, but not on services. So that fee only gets applied if you actually get a purchase order. So if you never get a purchase order through e-procurement, you never get charged a fee. You only get charged the fee if you are providing a commodity, a physical tangible good, and it's through e-procurement. All right. ncbids is the electronic bid submittal. It's part of the IPS system. It's not separate from IPS. It's part of it, so you don't have to reapply to be part of ncbids. Once you have it, are registered for IPS, you can participate in ncbids. It allows for electronic bid submissions, and there won't be an email reminder on this. You must be registered with EVP and IPS to participate in it. It only accepts PDF and image file uploads. All uploads must individually be less than 12 megabytes. So be cautious of the file size. It increases when scanning documents. There is online training for ncbids website, and the link is listed there. There is training for vendors as well as converting Excel to PDF. One other thing to note about ncbids is not every bid that is on IPS is eligible to participate in an electronic bid submittal. And they should be either one or the other. It should either be electronic or hard copy. So you should not find one that says either or. So you do need to pay attention to that when you're looking at the IPS postings. IPS has postings for state agencies can put it on there. Local governments can put things on there. Community colleges or universities could as well to post things where they need a bid submitted, and it will indicate on there if it's an electronic bid or not. The electronic vendor portal, when you're starting registration, there will be certain things that you need. You need internet access. You need your federal tax ID or employer identification number, your EIN, and you'll need a valid email address because it will send you an email very shortly into the registration process to verify that you really have that email address and have access to it. So you need to have that. Getting started with EVP before registering, we highly recommend viewing the North Carolina EVP web-based trainings. There's a comprehensive list of those trainings at eprocurement.nc.gov, and you would click on user training and then vendor training, and you'll be able to see the trainings that are available. Once you're on the website, select user training tab followed by vendor training link. The vendor training link tab would be in the left margin of the web page. So EVP registration, you go to the EVP portal login page. I'm not going to read that out. Should be able to, if you've got the PDF, you should be able to click on that and it should be active. So if it's not, then you should be able to copy it and paste it into a browser and it should take you there. I would recommend probably using Google Chrome when you're using that. I don't know that there's a specific best browser to use, but that one is probably pretty good. Click vendor not registered, register now. If you've never gone through EVP, it's possible that some folks who are on the call have already registered in EVP, but they just didn't register for Hub. So if you've never gone on EVP, you would need to click on vendor not registered, register now, and complete the registration process. If you need help, there is an 800 number for EVP registration. So you dial that 888-211-7440 option 2 to get to that helpline. And they're very good. They walk people through the EVP registration process all the time. So they know the places where people get tripped up, and they can help you get logged in. They can help you once you're in there, making sure that you can navigate correctly. And they have been known on occasion to even help people decide what are appropriate commodity codes to choose for their business. So that may be an option as well. That help desk is available from 7:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday. There is an email that you can use as well. So highly encourage you to call that number if ever you get stuck anywhere in the process. Really, 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 I encourage it. By the way, I want to pause for a second because I've been looking at the screen as we're going on and referring to things like links that are in this on the screen. And I do want to be mindful that we have some folks on the call who called in on the phone. And I want to make sure that those folks are able to follow along. So we've got some folks on the phone. There's 3 of you, it appears. And if you want to go ahead and just say, yes, I'm following along, that would be great. Would you mind chiming in? If you muted yourself on the phone, I think it's *6 to unmute. I'm not positive of that. But let's pause for the folks on the phone for just a sec. Looks like somebody
yes,
might.
I'm following along.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm following along.
Okay. 2 out of 3. All right. Well, let's keep going. And if anybody has any questions or they get a little off track, please let me know. Okay, so here is the login screen for EVP. and it just has a username and a password. And if you forgot your username, you can click there. If you forgot your password, you can click there. As I said, if you've never done this before, you won't even put that in. You won't put a username or password in. You'll just go down below the login button where it says vendor not registered, register now, and you'll click register now. And it will bring up this screen, which has a vendor name, vendor type, federal tax ID, and it'll ask you to re-enter your federal tax ID once you've done that. And there's a little, where you see that little gray circle next to the field name, it's got a little I in there, sort of an informational field that tells you a little bit more about what they want for that field. And we highly encourage that when you put your vendor name in, you use your official name that your tax ID is registered under. Um, Sometimes vendor names, people refer to them in shorthand, um, and they don't necessarily say the entire name, but we want your entire official name for your vendor company name in there. Um, Please don't do shortcuts on that. Just give us the full official name. That is helpful. Okay, and so once you've entered in all that information, you click register, and then it will say verify email, and it will have sent you an email that said, you know, we want you to click on this link to verify that you actually received the email. They want to make sure that it's going to the right place and somebody's not trying to spam things or um, pull a fast one. Okay. So, and if you did not receive your verification email, it might be in your spam folder. So you can check that. You could also request another email um, be sent. And there is the help desk phone number is listed there as well if you're having trouble with that. Um, and let's see. So once you do that, you'll get this email. It'll say, thank you for your interest in doing business with the state of North Carolina. Please click the following link to verify and continue. So click to verify that email, and you should be able to go back to the login and enter your username and password. So you may have to actually create a username at this point and create a password. Please be mindful of what your password is, but don't panic if you lose it, because on this screen there's a forgot password item, and you could also call the help desk for assistance as well. So registration type, you'll notice on the left-hand side there is a column that says registration type and then company information, contacts, addresses, locations, terms of use, and there's a little exclamation mark next to all of those items. And those are things that the system needs you to do to continue. And those will change as you continue and based on, I believe, what registration type you choose. So registration type is, are you registering for EVP, IPS, hub? Those are the registration types. So it'll give you a little bit of information about those, like the interactive purchasing system. It tells you a little bit about that and what you need uh, in order to complete the registration process. And then there's a little button or a little box that you would click in to say start registration process. And you click that for all of the items that you want, whether it's IPS, e-procurement, or hub. And then the system will know which fields to make you put in. The hub field, when you get to that point, you will have some, this is still that same screen. So you would click the Start Hub certification process to make sure that you're doing that. Then you could, if you need to leave or something, you could click Save and come back to it later. Or you could just click Next and continue on, and it will have some general company information that it'll want you to put in there, company website, vendor name. It'll show your tax ID, and you notice that it says IRS verification status pending. The system does check to make sure that the tax ID that you submit matches the vendor name. So, and if that's the case, great. If it matches, great. If it doesn't match, you'll probably get contacted by e-procurement or EVP to say, hey, there's some difference here, to try to figure out what's going on. It doesn't necessarily slow down the work that we do for certification, but it is something that they do check on the EVP side. We'll also ask some information about, the type of business. Are you an LLC, a corporation, sole proprietorship? Is your business based in North Carolina? Business characteristics. Is your business not for profit? Yes or no? If it's not for, if it is a not for profit, again, we do not certify nonprofits as hub. It will also ask you if you're a nonprofit work center for the blind and severely disabled. That is a specific type of nonprofit. A disabled business enterprise is also a specific type of nonprofit that it will ask you about. It'll ask you if you're a government entity. It'll ask if you're an educational entity. And all of you will probably say, no, I'm not a government entity. No, I'm not an educational entity. And you can indicate if your business is a small business or not. That's a yes, no. And they are, I believe that they're going to be changing the criteria that's listed there, and it's going to be based on SBA rules for what is considered a small business. Right now, I think it's based on a very broad type of industry. There has been a recent executive order, EO 143, that said that the hub office will set up a small business enterprise program. It is very much a new requirement for us to do that. So we are still working on what that is going to mean, what it's going to look like, and what's going to be involved with that. But in EVP, there may eventually be something in here that talks about small business enterprise. The small business enterprise requirements from that executive order are 100 employees or less, and $1.5 million or less in annual, I think it's net income, I think it is. So, so that is basically the definition of small business enterprise. There is a small business enterprise page on our website so that people who are hub vendors can apply to be a small business enterprise. At this point, you do need to be a hub before you can be a small business enterprise. So there's there in AVP right now, when you go in, you will not see that option. Right now, it's a document that you would have to contact us. There, you actually might have a way to download it from our website and submit it to us after you're hub certified. So once we move through that business characteristics part, there's also a contact section where you indicate who the contacts for your company will be. And you can have multiple contacts, or you could just have one. And it will tell you who's the main contact, who's the account owner. So depending on what kind of contact you are, you may be able to do different things in EVP. An account owner should be able to do everything that's requested, but somebody who is not that, there might be another kind of contact that's not a main contact. That person might be able to just change their information, but not other information in EVP. So you'll put in addresses for your firm, and you create a new address, and you'll need addresses for purchase orders, payments, and invoices for e-procurement. IPS and hub registration require an address for correspondence, so quotes, solicitations, hub-related information. So you would create a new address, and it will show you what that looks like. The example on the screen is just Wake Tech, Wake Street, Raleigh, in Wake County. And then you click next. You can create multiple addresses, but if you only have one, you only need one. By the way, the little pencil icon over here on the right underneath the Create New button, that pencil icon allows you to edit the contact information or the addresses here. So anywhere in EVP that you see this little icon, the little pencil thing, that means you can make a change to whatever it's next to. Locations, that specifies where POs are going to be sent, and it can be tied to the contacts, or the addresses. This might be an area where you need to know an account owner, account manager, and e-procurement forms. There may be a different place to send an order form than to send an invoice or to respond to an invoice. Or the remit to, I guess not an invoice, but remit to or bill to. So invoices would be sent for the 1.75% transaction fee on commodities. So IPS would also have a location that would need to be identified, but I don't believe you need to do that for Hub. I believe the Hub uses the IPS location. So once you do location, you'll have the option to select commodity codes, construction codes, and contractor services. So this is totally up to you on what you choose. Our commodity code list has changed as of July. The commodity codes that are now used are the UNSPSC codes. It's a United Nations code. I can't remember what all the acronyms for that mean, but we used to use NIGP codes and we've switched to the UN codes. So they are, if you've ever been in EVP before, they did sort of a crosswalk to say in an NIGP, your code was this. So in UN, it should be this code. It wouldn't hurt to go back in and double check your commodity codes if you're already in EVP. But if you have never been in EVP, everything's fresh. Nothing has been selected for you. You can go in and select those commodity codes. EVP allows you to select as many codes as you want, but we strongly caution you against choosing 20 or 30 different commodity codes. If you can narrow it down to 3 to 5, that's fantastic. There are multiple uses for this information. From the hub vendor side, the hub vendors use this to try to find bid opportunities and try to find the work that is appropriate for them to do. From the agency side, the people who want to buy things from you, they are looking to find people who actually do what they need to do. So it can be confusing to them if they come in and they see 30 commodity codes and they're all over the board, because they're like, what does this company really do? I don't know. If it's only 3 to 5 commodity codes selected, then their, I think, confidence in that you do that work is a little higher. If somebody has 30, 50 commodity codes, I'm going to skip by them because I don't have the time to go through that entire list and see, do they really do this? Are they doing what I'm looking for? I don't. They chose everything. I'm just going to look for somebody who's a little more focused than that. So I just want to be mindful that there are different perspectives on the codes that are put in here. So a lot of the perspective of a hub vendor is I want to try to find work. And the perspective from the people who are looking for hub vendors to use is I need to find somebody to do this specific thing. So they're looking for to make sure those things match. There are construction codes as well that are based on a series of standardized codes that are used. So there are construction codes as well, and again, some of them are very broad, so you probably need to look at them. There's actually a lot fewer construction codes than there are commodity codes. So construction codes, um, some of those categories are kind of broad, and you may need to select multiples of them. It's not terribly uncommon to see more than 5 construction codes with construction-oriented companies. That's a little more tolerable on the construction side than it is on the goods and services side. Um, but still, we wouldn't expect to see 30 codes in there. Contractor services, kind of similar thing. There are different um, items that you can select there. And again, there's you can select the commodity codes and then you can edit it with the little icon there. And I'm going to try to see if I can speed up a little bit because we're at 10:46 and we're not through EVP yet. So here are the divisions that you can choose for construction codes, and there are subsets of those divisions as well. And then different contractor services, design services, architectural services or engineering services, um, or construction services, general contractor, general trades, or subcontractor. Please, uh, sometimes folks choose architectural services or engineering services to get a head start on um, what projects are coming, because designers are usually requested before bids are put out for construction services. So they have to design the building before they can build the building. And some folks use that to say, I want to know what architectural services are out there, requests so that I can say, oh, that one's in my arena. Um, they're going to be building a totally new building. I do electrical. They're going to need electrical. So I'll be prepared to look out for that bid opportunity. Um, the challenge with that is when state agencies are looking for architects, you may show up in the architect search and you may get some contacts regarding that. They need, a lot of times they need somebody who is licensed and has a license number for those things, those services, architectural and engineering. So they will need to know that people are licensed. So that's why there is a license number section under there, under the construction services, as well as for the electrical. Hub certification. So here's where you would indicate hub status will be not certified when you first come in here. The hub main location, you'll pick your main location that you'd already entered in. You'll select your hub category, minority, and you have to select a specific minority. You can't select multiple categories there. Um, so at this point, we only certify one of those categories. So we don't have Black/Hispanic. It's just either Black or Hispanic. So, and you can choose which of those you've got. The ownership of the firm would need to be indicated. The ownership type, whether it's a sole proprietor, LLC, corporation, franchise, something like that. And then once you do that with the business start date, um, then you click create new over here, and that creates a new owner that you would enter in. So each owner that you have for the company, we need to have their first name, last name, ownership percentage, voting percentage, the years that they've owned it, um, race, sex, disability status. And the ownership needs to add up to 100%. So don't just put in one owner. If there's 3 owners, put in all 3 of them. And again, if you need to edit that, there's the little icon for the pencil, but right next to it, there's a trash can that would be for deleting that. So be a little cautious if you need to edit something. Try not to click on the trash can because that will delete what you've entered. And then it also asks, is management and daily business operations of this firm controlled by the person who owns 51% stock, interest or stock in the firm? Yes or no? So Hub um, certification is based on ownership and control. So we don't want somebody to be an absentee owner and they just, own it 100% outright. They are in one of the categories that we certify and they own it, but then they don't have anything to do with managing it and they just have somebody that they hired run the company for them. They need to be involved in running that company. There are additional certification steps, and we're going to go over those beyond the EVP registration. And it just EVP lets you know there's more to do than just EVP. But in order for us to get started, you need to finish the EVP before we get the application and the documents. Okay, so when you see this green success bar, the hub certification information has been saved. Great, you've done it right. The last thing you'll need to do is the terms of use for any registration type that you had, EVP, IPS, hub. You'll need to go through the terms of use. There's a little check mark or check box down there that says accepted. And then once you do all of those for IPS and hub, you click I accept down at the bottom, and then your registration will be successfully submitted. You'll again see that little green bar. That should probably make everybody happy that you have successfully registered for hub and IPS. Registration does not mean certification for hub. So just because you registered in EVP as hub does not mean that you are instantly hub. It does take time to review the documents that you submit to us before it will show up in EVP. There's a search option in EVP as well as on the hub office website, the statewide uniform certification that indicates who is hub and who is not. So certification on the hub office website, if you're looking for the certification forms or anything related to certification, you go to the hub office website. That's https://ncadmin.nc.gov/businesses/hub. That's a hard one to remember, so I never do it. I just open a browser and type in NC Hub Office, and it's usually the first link that comes up, and it takes me to the Hub Office website. Then I scroll down to certifications, which has like the books and the diploma and the hat there for to indicate that's where the certification page is. There are 3 applications that you can fill out. You only fill out one, and you make sure that you fill out the right one. The statewide uniform certification application is for somebody who has never applied before and does not already hold certification through NCDOT or another entity that we have reciprocity with, and I'll show you which those are in a sec. But the statewide uniform certification application is 5 pages long. And the other 2, the reciprocity applications for DOT and the NC Hub reciprocity, those are both 1-page applications. So it's if you already have DOT DBE certification, make sure you use the DOT NC Hub reciprocity application. It'll save you a lot of time in doing that. DOT uses a lot of the same criteria that we do, and they do more extensive looks at income than we do. So we accept their certification on a reciprocity basis. You do still need to do EVP. You do still need to fill out the 1-page application. And there's a couple pieces of documentation that we need for that. And that's similar for the other reciprocities as well. So there's 3 applications. Choose the right one. If you have any questions about that, you can contact the hub office and say, I want to certify. I'm not sure which application to use. Can you help me with that? And there are several people in the office that would be able to help you decide which one to do. Okay, reciprocity certification options. NCDOT, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Certification, is one of those reciprocity options. We also certify or have reciprocity based on U.S. Small Business Administration 8A Business Development Program or Woman-Owned Small Business. U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, if the company is a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, we accept that. National Minority Supplier Development Council and MSDC, we accept that. And Women Business Enterprise, National Council, WeBank, we accept that on a reciprocity basis. And all of those are if the company is based in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. If they're based in some other state, then they have to go through the full certification process. These reciprocity applications are 1 pages and there's limited documentation. EVP registration is still required. Please note that the service disabled veteran owned small business, that is a certification that we recognize on a reciprocity basis that um, they're a small business and they are certified. It doesn't necessarily mean that the category that the company would be certified under is disabled. If it was a service disabled veteran that owned that business, but they were Asian American, they would be certified as Asian American, not as disabled. And we don't have a veteran hub category, so we don't have any designation that a company is a veteran owned business. And that's based on the general statute. So we go based on what general statute dictates to us as what the certification categories are. So DOT, disadvantaged business enterprise, NC Hub reciprocity. If your company is already NCDOT DBE, basically the information that's asked is your firm's name, your tax ID, your certification program and expiration, approval letter. We'll need your approval letter from DOT, proof of citizenship and legal permanent residence, proof of ethnicity if applicable, proof of disability if applicable, and you need to sign and date the application. We do on the recertification side, and this isn't reciprocity related, but recertification side, we will ask for proof of citizenship and legal permanent residence each time a recertification is up. And the question has been asked, why do you need that each time? I'm still who I am. I still have my driver's license. So why do I need that? The legal legal permanent residents can apply for certification. So, it's possible that that status can change. So if somebody who is a legal permanent resident but not a U.S. citizen applied for certification, at the time they applied, they might have been legal permanent resident, but when they recertify, maybe something changed and their status is no longer legal. So they need to be a legal permanent resident. And so that's why we ask for proof of citizenship from everybody when we're recertifying. NC Hub reciprocity application, as I mentioned, there's different states that we look at. It's basically North Carolina and the states that surround us. We don't take certification from California on a reciprocity basis or New York on a reciprocity basis, just the states around us. And again, these are the list of certifications that we accept. And there's an image of what that application actually looks like. It's fairly simple. The portion down at the bottom is a box that shows what documentation is required. You do not have to specifically go through and check mark those items. It's probably a good idea to do that, to say, I've submitted this, I've submitted that, but it's not required for the application to be complete. The top portion and the signature are what you need to pay attention to. Certification page, again, I mentioned the certification page above, and it shows all the certification documents that we've got, all the different applications and the required documents. There's a challenge form, so if somebody is certified and somebody else says, you know what, they say that they're a female-owned business, but the husband really runs that place and she's just there in name. That is something that we have a third-party challenge form for. So somebody could submit that and we'd have to take a look at it and say, is this appropriate for this company to be hub certified? So that's on there as well. So here's the actual SWUC application. This is the 5-page document that we're looking at. And just looking at a time check, we're at 11 o'clock, so we've got a little bit more than an hour. Well, no, not more than an hour, less than an hour. So I'm going to try to go through this as thoroughly, but not in so much detail that we bog down. So statewide uniform certification application. It'll ask you some basic information about your company, name of your firm, contact name, where you're located, basic contact information. It'll also ask your company information about the legal name of the firm. Legal name of the firm, please. And the unique identifier, the tax ID, basically, is the FEIN number. DUNS number, we don't really use a whole lot. You can include that, but tax ID is what's really important. And you'll have needed to put that in the EVP section anyway. Method of acquisition. Did you start it as a new business? Did you buy it from somebody else? Was it a merger or consolidation? Those kinds of things. It will ask you if you're a corporation, a limited liability company, partnership, or sole proprietorship. Depending on which of these you choose, some of these other questions may be relevant and some might not be. The date the firm was established. So when did you start the company? And sometimes that can be a little fuzzy as to when that happened. But a good rule of thumb, if you can't pinpoint that date, is to go back and look at the when you submitted for your LLC or your corporation, when you submitted with the Secretary of State on creating that company. That is a date that you could use as well. Firm's relationship with other business. All these questions are there to understand is if your company has other relationships that could impact how you make decisions. So we want to make sure that the company is owned and controlled by somebody who is hub certified. And if some of the, depending on some of these answers, that control might not be terribly clear. So if you're a subsidiary of another firm, or somebody has uh, some other partnerships with you, or you're co-located somewhere, that adds a little bit of fuzziness to how independent you are in making decisions about the firm. It doesn't necessarily mean that, depending on how you answer this, no single question is going to knock you out. We'll take it in totality and look at it and see if you should be eligible. Ownership information. So this is based on each owner, and I believe there are slots for 3 owners. Some companies have more than 3 owners, and if you do have more than 3 owners, we need to know this information about each of them. So you would take a look at you would make copies of one of these so that you could keep adding additional owners as necessary. So we'll need the name and title of that owner, contact phone number, race or ethnicity, gender, if they're disabled or not, if they're disadvantaged and currently certified. Um, are you a U.S. citizen or permanent resident alien? Percentage of ownership, date applicant acquired ownership, initial investment to acquire ownership. So did you put money in? Did you put real estate? Did you put equipment or expertise? Those are all things that could be used to show investment to acquire ownership. Number of shares owned is listed there. If you're a sole proprietorship, you probably don't have shares, but if you're a corporation, there should be some shares there. Are you related by blood or marriage to any of the other owners? If yes, who? Do you own any other businesses? And do you perform supervisory or management function to another firm? Do you work for any company organization that has a relationship with this firm? And identify the daily management functions that you do in the firm. So if there's just one of these that you do, like marketing and sales, if that's the only thing that you do, well, maybe you don't have total control of that company. If you don't make the financial decisions, if you don't hire and fire people, then maybe that's not really in your control. So that helps us understand that a little bit better. And then we've got owner number 2, and that's just the same as what we just covered. So owner number 2. At the bottom of that, there's list all contributions of or transfer of assets to or from your firm or to any of its owners or from any of its owners in the past 2 years. So, and if you've got more information that you need to provide other than these 3 slots, you can attach an additional sheet if needed. So it wants to know what the contribution or asset was. Was it just cash money? What was the dollar value? Who gave it? Who was it transferred to? What's the relationship there? Maybe it's the owner, maybe it's an investor, and the date of that transfer. And that's within the past 2 years. So if it's been more than 2 years, then you really don't need to worry about this. But don't leave it blank. If there's anything, if there was nothing to do, just say NA there, and you might even put a note that said no transfers over the past 2 years. You don't necessarily have to, but you could. Control, officers and boards of directors. Identify your firm's, your officers and board of directors. Officers, there's different slots for officers and board of directors. Name, title, date of appointment, ethnicity, and gender. And do they perform a management or supervisory function for any other business, and list what that is. And do they work for any firm, has a relationship for this firm. One of the things that we're trying to make sure of is that we don't have some company out there that's not a hub firm that says, hey, you work for us. We want you to start a company and get hub certified. That will help us get business because we have a vendor that we certify, that we work with. But the first company really kind of controls that other company because they're kind of set them up, and like there's a relationship there that's doesn't allow for total control by the hub vendor. So we're trying to make sure that you have control. We really want you to have control. Daily management functions, identify your firm's management personnel who are not owners that control your firm in the following areas. If more than 2 people, you can attach a separate sheet. Okay, and that goes marketing, sales, purchasing, signing company checks, a lot of different items there. Professional licenses, you need to identify the name of the license or permit holder, the type of license or permit, and the expiration date and the license number and the state that it's done in. A lot of the construction and design things, you have to be certified in North Carolina to do work as that entity in North Carolina. So that's something to pay attention to. References, provide 2 business references, and you indicate those on there. They're in the documents that you have to provide. There are letters of reference that are requested. I would suggest that these be the people that you get those letters of reference from. No need to have more people, 2 names here that are business references and 2 separate people providing letters of reference. Probably just more efficient to have these folks do it. We do prefer business references, but at times, especially if it's a new business, you may not necessarily have a whole bunch of clients or suppliers that you've worked with that could give you a reference. So if you can't get a business reference in terms of a client or a supplier, then you could talk to somebody who knows the type of work that you've done and your expertise in your area, even if they are not a client of yours. Maybe it's somebody you've worked with as a colleague, and they could provide a reference for you. We have had folks say, we're really, really new at this. Can I provide like family or friends as references? And the answer is yes, you can, but please try to get as business oriented as you can. Somebody who knows what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, and can speak to your commitment and how you've succeeded in the past, or that you know where you're going, those kinds of things. Other certifications are also things that are on the application DBE for any Department of Transportation for any state, SBA, Small Business Administration 8A certification. Home state certifications really only apply to companies that are outside of North Carolina. So I don't think anybody here really falls into that category. So probably don't need to worry about that too much. And if you do have one of those, what is the date of your most recent site visit? When was it performed? Contact name. One of the most important things that you need to do on here is sign and date the application. If the application is not signed and dated, we will not process it, and it will delay processing of the application. A lot of times we get folks who come in and say, I've got this project. They want to use me as a sub, but I need to be hub certified. Um, and it takes time to review the documents and make a determination of if you should be certified. So we would love to be able to do this in a really fast fashion, but there's a lot of stuff to look at. And so we need to make sure that we've got the time to do that. So we encourage you to do it early before you've actually submitted a bid to somewhere that needs you to be certified. Um, but make sure that it's signed and dated so that that we don't have to come back to you. One thing that I would say, I think I mentioned before, if there's anything on here that's not applicable, I mentioned don't leave blanks, put not applicable on here, NA. And if there's any question about what you're doing, you can contact the hub office and say, here's my situation. How do I fill this out? And we can help you with that. But you may not want to do that. You may just want to say, okay, here's my situation. I'm going to tell you what it is. We recommend that with every application that comes in, people submit a cover letter that says, Dear Hub Office, I'm submitting the application, and list any issues that we may need some clarity on. So you may want to say in there, I'm not providing the following documents because I'm not disabled. Um, or I didn't fill out this part of the application because of this reason. So it helps us evaluate the application uh, at that time and can uh, limit the amount of back and forth that we need if there's any questions. So here's what it all looks like when it's printed out together. And we've got circled at the end, the application, sign and date your application. So make sure that you do that. So again, at this point, I want to pause for just a sec and see if anybody's got any questions about this. Mindy, you have a question?
Yes. So for the references, can they be out of state, or is it better to have them just in state?
They can be out of state. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? And I'll be happy to answer them as we go along. Mindy, if you click that little hand, raise your hand button again. Tiara, go ahead.
I just have a question. I started the certification process, and due to life, COVID, and I have a newborn, just all kinds of things going on, I didn't meet that 30-day requirement for submitting the supplemental documents. Would I be considered a new applicant, or do I need to just go through the same process?
No, I think you're probably good to just submit. You could call the office and say, this is, I did the EVP, but it's been 45, 50 days since then. Is it okay for me to just send in my application? And the answer will probably be yes.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yeah, we want people to certify. We're not trying to put up artificial barriers. We do want people to do it in a mindful way. And we have had times where people have submitted the EVP part and they never submitted an application or required documents. Apparently they thought all they needed to do was the EVP part, but that doesn't get you where you need to go. So you do need to submit the application and the documents. Anybody else? All right. We'll move on to the documents portion. But if you have any questions and you want to come back to something that we've covered previously, that's fine. So the required document list, it's based on your company business structure. There are some items that everybody has to submit. The image on the screen right now is there's a documents required, and the top portion under the dark gray bar, all those items at the top are required of everybody. The part below where it says corporation and it's got the gray bar, the items with boxes next to them below that are only for corporations. So you only, beyond that first part where everybody has to submit things, the bottom half basically is dependent on what type of business you are: corporation, LLC, partnership, or franchise. The simplest piece is sole proprietor, because we don't require additional information beyond the required stuff at the top for a sole proprietor. Corporations have more information that they need to provide. LLCs, they do need to provide articles of organization and operating agreements. So it depends on what your organization of your company is, what documents you need to submit. Submit all the documentation within 30 days of registration in EVP. We just kind of mentioned that there's probably a little bit of flexibility there, maybe a little bit of leeway. Applicants and documents are reviewed once you've submitted all the required documents. So we don't start reviewing until we have everything we need. Failure to submit the required documents in a specified time will result in an administrative withdrawal. That's usually for when it's many, many days after the EVP registration. If we haven't received anything, 6 months down the road and you never submitted anything beyond EVP, that's probably going to lead to an administrative withdrawal. 31 days after registration, probably not. So work experience, well, let me come back here. So on the required documents, you do have to do the statewide uniform certification application. And the next thing on the list is work experience, resumes for all owners. So include places of ownership or employment with corresponding dates. You are not trying to get a job with the hub office. So this does not have to be a resume that shows every single thing you would do as if you were applying for a particular job, but it should show that you have the expertise to run the business that you are owner of. So hopefully it will indicate that. It does say references at the bottom of this example, but this is just an example. You don't have to follow this exactly. And we have a references section for your company. So you don't necessarily need to put references for you as an individual. Proof of citizenship or permanent residence, birth certificate, passport, voter's registration card, green card, military ID, or driver's license all count. They must be current and valid. So please don't give us an expired passport or expired driver's license. That would be an unfortunate way to realize that your driver's license is expired, other than getting stopped by the police, which has happened to me before. I didn't do anything bad. It was just a checkpoint, and they said, "Oh, did you know you're expired?" And I'm like, no. Okay, so proof of ethnicity, passport, green card, birth certificate, or ethnicity affidavit. So some birth certificates have ethnicity status, but when in doubt, use the ethnicity affidavit that's located on the North Carolina Hub Office website. It does show a notary component there, and these days that can be a little bit challenging to get a notary. I mean, we're supposed to be safer at home right now. So if you cannot get a notary to sign off on this, you can still submit it, but indicate on that letter that you send to us that it's during COVID-19, safer at home, I was unable to get a notary to sign this. So please accept it anyway. I signed it, and I dated it, and I've indicated which category I fall into. Please accept it. You don't necessarily have to say all that, but that's just kind of the point of there's a notary part, but during COVID-19, we have flexibility there, and we're not requiring you to do that if you can't. Copies of professional licenses if required. If you're a general contractor, you better have a general contractor's license for the appropriate dollar value that you need that for. Electricians, plumbers, engineers, architects, they all need that licenses to operate. We are not asking for like a license with your municipality, not a business license to just operate. We're talking about this as a specific trade or profession that requires license. Schedule of salaries paid to all officers, managers, owners, or directors of the firm. There's many different ways that you can answer this question. It's basically, how do you pay yourself and or your people that work for you? Do you do it monthly? Do you do it weekly? Is it by the job? You can submit it as an explanation on company letterhead. By the way, the letter that I mentioned before, that introductory letter that said, here I did these things that are not applicable, that should be on letterhead, on company letterhead. So it's not terribly hard to create company letterhead if you don't have it, but it should have your company contact information on there as the company letterhead. So you can indicate that, because it may be that I don't get paid until I get paid by my client. It's a project by project basis. And you might be the only person in your business. So that might be how you operate, is I don't get paid until the company gets paid. But you may also have weekly timesheets or something from your accounting software that might be a way to demonstrate this as well. Copies of signed leases for office and storage space. If you're a home-based business, on that letter, on your letterhead, submit an explanation that says, I operate out of my home. Do we have a question? Okay, maybe not. So if you rent some office space, if you rent space to store your equipment, then this is the kind of thing that we're looking for, whether you have a lease or rental or ownership of that. Actually, it says signed leases. So it's talking about leases and rental. If you own it outright, that's not necessarily something that you have to show. List of equipment, whether leased or owned. Signed lease agreements, titles, proof of ownership of equipment needed to operate your business, and the tools of the business. So a lot of the items in the pictures that we're showing here are big things: trucks, tractors, backhoes, office, big pieces of office equipment, that kind of thing. You may not have a ton of things. If you're a service and you're basically, you have your computer and your monitor and your phone, and that's what you need to do your work, then you could provide a list to us that says, these are the things that I use in my operation of my business. We don't need, like, if you are a carpenter, we don't need a list of every single hammer you've got. You don't have to show us, where you bought it from Home Depot or Ace or something like that. But if you could say, tools, I have tools for this kind of job, that would probably be sufficient there. And if you have questions about this, if it's a little bit unclear, you could contact the hub office and ask for our certification staff, and they can help you guide you through that a little bit. Documented proof of contributions used to acquire ownership for each owner. How did you start the business? Was it with your own money? Was it a gift? Did you inherit it? And send documentation that you have, or submit an explanation on company letterhead. So some of these, I mean, if you have the the canceled check of that you wrote to buy the business. That's probably pretty good documentation there, but there might be other ways of documenting that as well. Did anybody have a question? Okay. All right. And by the way, if we've had anybody join the call as a on the phone and not through the link, if you could send an email back to Tiara that said, I was on the call, and it looks like we've got about 5 or 6 people who are on the phone. Send an email to Tiara that says, I was on the call. Okay, we want to make sure that you're captured and you kind of get credit for being here. Okay, so statement prepared and signed by your bank institution listing names of all persons who have signature authority on your business account. There's usually a signature authorization card that that they would have. So who has the authority to handle your business banking account? And you may not have a business banking account. It may be a personal account, but we would encourage you to have a business banking account. But if you don't, then who has access to the account that you write checks from? 2 letters of reference. We've talked about this a little bit. Include contact information, the nature and duration of the relationship. It is not uncommon for people who are submitting applications to sort of pre-write the letter and send it to the reference to say, this is, and make sure it's accurate and true what you're asking them to sign, but it's basically making it a little easier on them to be a reference for you. It's easier to say, yes, I agree with what you've said in this letter, I will sign it, than to have somebody come up with it from nothing. Some people might be more comfortable writing a personal reference like that and saying, you know what, no, I got this, I'll write it for you, don't worry about it. But just make it easy for them to be helpful to you. Home state certification if out of state business. I don't think we have any of those here. So, but if we had, this was from Illinois, so they could be certified from anywhere in the country, but they would have to be certified in their home state before they could get certified with the hub office if they're not based in North Carolina. So proof of disability, if applicable. So there's several different ways that you can do this. There's an affidavit that I believe needs to be signed by a doctor. You can get a letter from Veterans Affairs. You could have a specific letter from a doctor that indicates the disability. If somebody is service disabled, veteran-owned small business, and they have that certification, we do accept that, and that's actually what that VA letter is on the left. So we do accept that as proof of disability. Corporations, so that's everything that everybody has to submit. So everybody has to submit something related to that. And again, disability, that might not be applicable. And if that's the case, then on that list of required documents, put a little note next to that that says NA. Or if it's the ethnicity, and if it's a female-owned firm, Caucasian female, that's trying to get certified, then the ethnicity portion is not applicable either. So those are a couple examples of when some of the required documents might actually not be applicable. Okay, so here's the information that corporations must provide. And it's articles of incorporation signed by a state official, both sides of all corporate certificates and stock, transfer ledger that shows the transfer of ownership of stock, assumed name certificate, shareholders agreement, minutes of the first and most recent stockholder and board of directors meetings, and corporate bylaws and any amendments. So if you're a corporation, you should have a board, and you should have minutes of those board meetings. Okay, official articles of incorporation. Here's what they can look like. So we've got one from state of Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona. Right now, if you got them signed right now, Elaine Marshall would be the person who we would expect to see as a Secretary of State for that. Both sides of all corporate stocks, corporate certificates in stock. So here's an example of what that can look like. Transfer ledger, the name of who it was, options for common stock, warrants. And so there's a couple different ways that a transfer ledger can be shown. So there was the assumed name certificate for the state of North Carolina. Shareholders agreement. That's an example. Minutes of first and most recent stockholder and board of directors meetings. Those can be very helpful to us in understanding who controls the company and what decisions are being made and by who. Corporate bylaws and any amendments to them. Okay, so that's all for corporations. Limited liability companies must provide the following documentations, and this includes PLLCs. Articles of organization signed by the Secretary of State, and operating agreements. So you should have both of those, and it should tell how the LLC is going to operate. So LLCs just have the articles of organization and operating agreements. Partnerships, including LLP, limited liability partnerships, have a partnership agreement that needs to be submitted, and that's a sample partnership agreement there. There's not a template that is required by the hub office. So, and franchise agreements would be provided by franchises. Okay, questions about that documentation? We've got a little bit more to go, but we've basically covered EVP, we've covered the application, we've covered required documents. And let me see, did somebody have their hand up?
I do. This is Mindy.
Hi, Mindy.
Hey, on the operating agreements for LLC, does that mean operating agreement with another organization, or is that something I should have from the state?
That is something that it's not really from the state, but it's something that you should have to show how your organization will run. It's basically an internal document, because usually there's with an LLC, there's maybe more than one person involved. There's usually one primary person, but there are other people usually involved in the organization, and it is to kind of set out how decisions will be made, how the company will function.
And where do you get that document? Is that on the website?
I don't think there's one specific place for it. You could probably do a search on, LLC operating agreements to find various options.
Okay, great. Now, the fact that really I do everything right now, I do have some contractors when needed, but that's very rare. Does that hurt your ability to get certified?
It shouldn't. I mean, it still needs something that shows how your company is going to operate.
Okay.
Even if you're the primary person there. But it shouldn't impact that. I mean, we have plenty of people who are one-person shops, and they can get certified. I mean,
Okay,
that's fine.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Feel free to interrupt me whenever it makes sense. So how you submit your application and documents, there's several ways you can do it. Hand delivery probably right now is not the best option. I don't think they'll let you in the building right now because we're mostly teleworking. But if you do send it in by mail, we do have staff that go into the office and get the applications, they get the mail, and will distribute it to the right person for review. You can send it by fax, and that basically is the same as email, but it just converts it to an electronic format that we can access through our email. And then there's also the email, so you can scan it in and send it to that email address, the huboffice.doa@doa.nc.gov. So the hub office is part of the Department of Administration. If you see on the top of the slide, there's a building up there. That is the administration building in downtown Raleigh, across from the legislature and that museum with the big giant globe out front. That's where we're located. That's our building. So that's where Department of Administration is mainly based. So those are the ways that you can submit the document and the application. If you are eligible, you will receive an email with a letter indicating that your company is certified. The date on the letter will be the start date of your certification. Your hub certification category will be in parentheses after your company name. If you were in one of the categories, Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, this will be the only time you will see it as minority owned, but not like Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian. It will just say minority owned on your letter. Everywhere else that we show it, it will show your specific minority category or ethnic category. It notes in the letter that the certification lasts for 4 years. At the end of 40 years, you have to recertify if you want to continue. Please do that. Um, if there are changes to your company, we need you to notify us within 30 days if it would affect eligibility. If there's any ownership changes, if you shift from a sole proprietor to a corporation or an LLC to a corporation or something like that, then that's the kind of thing that you need to let us know about, so that we can understand if you should continue to be hub certified. A lot of times it won't change the hub certification, but it's possible. We have had times where somebody has been hub certified for years and years and years, and the owner decided that they wanted to step back a little bit, and they had somebody purchase enough of the business that they were no longer 51% owner, so they were less than 50%, and that shifted it. So that longtime hub vendor, because of reasons that make sense for their business, is no longer hub certified and no longer eligible for hub certification. Sometimes you will be asked for a certification number. There is no certification number, and we try to get this across to public entities whenever we do trainings, whenever we talk about certification with local governments, municipalities, counties, school systems. We try to tell them there's no hub certification number. Don't ask for it. The letter that you have here is the official documentation that you are certified. If they do not accept this, they could look on our website to see that you're hub certified there. If they don't trust that and they don't trust the letter, there's not a lot that they're going to trust. They might need to call our director and say, hey, are they really certified? She'll say, yeah, they're certified. Did you get the letter? So hopefully you won't encounter that, because we're trying to make sure that the governments know that there's no certification number. Hub firm responsibilities. You do have responsibilities as a hub firm. Your responsibilities are mainly to maintain your EVP login and password. Not a huge issue if you forget your login ID or password, but do your best to maintain that. Update your profile in EVP if there's changes to your business structure. If you went from a sole proprietor to a corporation, change that. If your address changes, change that. If your email changes, if your phone number changes, change it. Because if the information in EVP is not right, it's not right for us and anybody who wants to get in contact with you to offer you the opportunity to bid on something or say, hey, does it make sense to partner, or tell me more about what you do. I'm curious if you're the right fit for us. Then they can't get in touch with you. And if your email address is not right, then you will not get any IPS notifications for bid opportunities that came up based on your commodity code. You will not get any notifications of recertification needs for hub certification. So if your email goes at a date and it bounces back to us, then you'll probably be uncertified eventually because there's not a lot of communication there. There's a lot of hub vendors. We have probably about 4,400 hub vendors right now. So it's a little bit hard to pick up the phone for each company. So it's the responsibility of the hub firm to keep this information up to date. And we know that sometimes things out of your control happen. That's fine. You can also always contact us and say, you know what, a hurricane hit my house and it destroyed it. And I have no idea how to get into EVP to change anything and let them know that my address changed because I used to work from home, but now my home's gone, so I'm working somewhere else. Or my phone number changed. Um, Let us know that. We may direct you to EVP and say, get help from them to make that happen in EVP. The hub office cannot change anything about your profile, whether it's an EVP or IPS, other than your hub certification status. We don't control your address. We don't control your commodity codes. We don't control your phone number. So it's up to you to keep up with those things. Review and make changes to commodity codes as needed. A lot of times people go in the first time, they put it in commodity code, and they never go back and change it. But your company might change over time. You might expand. The offerings that you have might be more than what you did when you first started. So those codes are not set in stone. You can change them whenever you want to. You can change them today and then go back in tomorrow and change them. That is fine. Please do that as much as you need. Um, we want to make sure that those codes reflect what you need, what you're looking for, and what you can do as best it can. So again, and this bottom thing is pretty important. Um, if anybody contacts you, an agency procurement or construction staff says, "Hey, can are you interested in this project?" Let them know whether you're going to bid or not. So respond to agency procurement and construction staff when you receive communication from them. They want to know if you can do it, but they might also be interested to know that, you know what, right now is not the time because I've got too much going on with this, but my um, my calendar will open up in about 4 months because this project is going to be done and I'll have capacity at that point. They will appreciate you telling them that, and they'll probably be more willing to come back to you later on. If you said, yes, by the way, I'm interested, now's not the right time. If you don't respond to them, they're probably going to say, why am I contacting that person? They never respond to me. And I don't want to go through the motions. I want to reach out to people who can do what I need to do. So if somebody contacts you and asks you to bid, contact them back, whether you're going to bid or not. Um, okay. So finding opportunities and developing your business. So watch your emails for bid opportunities related to commodity codes you've selected. You can search the IPS website for bid opportunities. You can search them by category, the type of work that's done, whether it's construction services or goods or some other specific services. There's a whole big list of them. You can do bids by department. So if you really want to do work with Department of Public Safety, you can look out for bids from them. There may be some local governments that are listed on there as well. So there might be a school system nearby that you want to do work with, or community college that you want to do work with, and you can take a look on there. Um, and you can also check the Hub Office website for bid opportunities. A lot of times, bids that are in IPS are also posted on the Hub Office website, but there are plenty of times when they're only posted on the Hub Office website. We have a way that anybody can post a bid opportunity, and I do mean anybody. Originally, it was just for construction contracts and contractors, but we looked at it and said, no, we want people to be able to post bid opportunities for goods and services as well. And then we were saying, well, so agencies might do that, but contractors might want to do it. And people who are going in for big, large contracts for goods and services projects, there may be a multi-million-dollar contract that they're going after, and they need somebody to help them with it. They may post something up there. We've had a church post up there, and we've had some nonprofits post up there for work. So there's all sorts of people who can post up there, and it's searchable. You can put in some keywords and search on things. If you're looking for projects only in Durham, you could just type in Durham and see what comes up. It might be from the city of Durham. It might be from Durham Public Schools, or it could be just somebody who's doing work in the city. Um, so consider submitting Hub Business Development Assessment for determining business needs and useful services for your company. And if you're working with Tierra, you may already be kind of in a better straight than if somebody who has not been. But the business assessment, we have somebody in the office who will kind of go through it and understand your areas where you're focusing on, areas where you're really strong, areas where you might need some assistance in, and then try to say, okay, here's some things that you might need to know about from the hub office perspective, but you may need to know some information about developing a business plan or a marketing plan, and we might actually send you to the small business center and say, that's a good place for you to go. And so we offer that to new hub vendors to do that. And actually existing hub vendors can do it as well, but they need to be certified already. So we don't do this for folks who are not already hub certified. So finding hub vendor information, sometimes you may just want to make sure that you're in the database. If somebody says, I'm looking for you, but I can't find you, you may want to go in and look to make sure of it. Or you might be a general contractor and you're looking for subcontractors, because general contractors, even if they're hubs, still have to look for hub participation. So they may want to look for hub vendors on here. You can search by company name. You can search by commodity code. You can search by location with city, county. You can look at construction specialties. If you're looking for a company name, I do recommend that you not type in the entire company name. The example of on the screen right now, it's the top one says Fortress Fencing LLC. If you typed in Fortress, you would find it. But if you type in Fortress Fencing, comma, LLC, it won't find it because you put a comma in, and in the company name, there's no comma. So the search is very literal, but it does have some flexibility. It starts with the first part of the company name. So on the second company name down there, if you typed in FENC, you would not find Jones Grading and Fencing, um, because fencing is not the first part of the name. But if you wanted to find fencing anywhere in the name, put a percent symbol in front of what you type in, and it will look for that wherever um, wherever it is in the company name. So we don't have any companies that start with the word fence, but we have about 12 of them that have fence somewhere in their name. And I use this a lot when I'm trying to find um, contractors for specific trades, whether it's engineers, architects, um, electricians, plumbers. I use this for all those trades because sometimes it's a little bit easier to find them that way than by going through the construction code or commodity code. Because when you've got folks who are putting things in that say, I just want to know about these types of projects because it might tangentially relate to what I'm doing. When I get somebody that on the architecture side and the company name says janitorial, pretty sure that company does not do architecture. Um, so this kind of helps me look to narrow things down and say, I just want the architects. So help me find the architects. It doesn't necessarily find everybody because nobody has to put their trade in their company name. It's not a requirement by any stretch. but it can help people find you if you do a very specific trade. Networking and marketing. Uh, Promote your business certification. So if you're Hub certified, let people know that. You can put it on your website. We have a logo that we can share that you can put on your website as long as you're certified. If you're not certified, you got to take it off. You can put that on your, I've seen it on business cards, on websites, on letterhead, those kinds of things. You can find and respond to relevant bid opportunities. Sometimes that's on the IPS site, sometimes that's on the Hub Office site. If you're working with a local government entity, it may be on their website. Leverage networking opportunities. So pay attention to things that the Small Business Center is doing, or your local Chamber of Commerce, and see about how to get in on those. Pre-COVID, they would have been in person. COVID era, we've been doing more things that are online, virtual, and so we're still kind of working through that. And all of us who are in this space are still trying to figure those things out. So we're doing the best we can. You're doing the best we can, and we just have to keep adapting. Attend purchaser and vendor meet and greets and pre-bid meetings. Sometimes the pre-bid meetings are virtual these days, but sometimes they are still in person. So please attend those meetings, even if you're not necessarily going to be the prime bidder on it, and you want to be a subcontractor. It makes sense for a subcontractor to go to that bid, that pre-bid meeting, to see who else is there, may be able to make connections with other GCs and say, hey, I do electrical. You need electrical. I can do it. Um, and it also helps to see who else is bidding on the project and say, okay, that's my competitor this time. Maybe I'm going for it myself as the GC. And those people are there and those people are there. And I know how they work. So maybe I can adjust some things with my bid. Um, there's no collusion going on. It's just, that they work in a particular way, they work in a particular way. Usually these bids come down to, can you do the work and are you the lowest bidder? So you do still have to win the work based on your ability to do the work and the lowest price most of the time. So if there's reverse vendor fairs, sometimes we do those where there's like a meet the purchaser event, um, where you can talk to people who actually do purchasing and understand the kinds of things that they purchase, and you can share with them what you do. We try to do those on a fairly regular basis. I can't tell you the next one that we're going to do, but if you're construction oriented and you can attend the state construction conference, I believe they're going virtual this month with the state construction conference. So it's still going to happen, but it's not going to be at the McKimmon Center like it usually is. Minority Enterprise Development Week. There are usually local minority enterprise development weeks throughout the state, and those are usually focused in particular areas. Like Durham will host one for the week. Charlotte will host one. Wilmington will do one. And it'll be like an entire week devoted to that, where they have different activities that you can participate in. So I would encourage you to pay attention to your local side of that and also pay attention on the state level. We usually do one in the December timeframe, and right now it's up in the air as to how that's going to happen, whether it'll be virtual or not. Um, right now, we're not planning on doing it in person. Reach out to capital project coordinators. On the state construction office website, there is a list of capital project coordinators. They're the people who oversee the projects for their different agencies. And they're listed there for state agencies, for community colleges, and state universities. So it's a big list of people that you can pay attention to and reach out to. Um, there's also a list of hub coordinators. The UNC General Administration website has a list of hub coordinators. I think December 2019 is the most up-to-date version of that. Um, so you can look at the hub coordinators and reach out to them. They mostly focus on construction, but they may be able to connect you internally with other contacts if you don't do construction, purchasing officers, end users, general contractors. Reach out to those folks and discuss your offerings and market. Um, Tips for submitting a solicitation response. Read solicitations very carefully and thoroughly. Ensure you follow the submission method instructions clearly. By the way, we did not write this slide. This was written for us by the purchasing director of the Department of Administration, who does hub vendor orientations for us. So this is a slide straight from her presentation. So pay attention to the following words: must, shall, required, mandatory. If you see that, then you got to do whatever it's saying is related to that. And it's not an option. You have to do it. So follow directions precisely, prepare detailed and organized responses. Do not assume that the state has previous knowledge of your company, products, or services. Contact the person listed on the cover page with any questions. There will usually be a particular period of time where you can do that. And they will post addendums to say, here are all the questions we got, and here are our responses. So that's to be fair to everybody to say, here are the questions we got. Everybody knows what questions people were asking, and everybody knows what answers we gave. So pay attention to those. Those might be useful. Even if you didn't ask the question, it might have been a question that's relevant to you. You can contact us at a number of different ways. Our phone number has changed recently. The new phone number is 984-236-0130. That's our main phone line that you can reach us on. You can reach us by email at that site there. I do want to encourage you to go to the Hub Office website, and maybe I can share that really quickly because we have a lot going on. So hopefully everybody sees the Hub Office website. At the top of the website is what we call the carousel. And you see these little dots down here. Each of those dots is a separate little article. And it starts with the job retention grant program, and it'll kind of cycle through each of those other items. And we've got at 1 o'clock today, we've got another presentation on job retention grant program. Then we've got a Meet the Purchaser event for the State Property Office. I just mentioned Meet the Purchaser events. So this is an opportunity to reach out to the State Property Office, particularly they are interested in real estate companies. And that's August 18th. So there's a way to register for that. You can look at the Financial Wellness for Entrepreneurship Lunch and Learn series. It's an 8-week session open to all Hub certified firms. You can register here. We had the first one yesterday, and I sat in on it. It was 1 hour. It was very energizing. These guys were very enthusiastic, seemed very knowledgeable about what they're talking about, and it's try to help entrepreneurs, be a little bit more mindful about finances and keep up with those kinds of things. So that is a fabulous opportunity for folks to participate. And we've got the new Small Business Enterprise Program. There's a way, if you click on that, it'll show you a little bit of information, what the requirements are, and there's an affirmation document there. It's very simple. It just kind of indicates, do you have meet these criteria? But right now it's just for Hub certified vendors. So let me go back here. So that's the Small Business Enterprise Program. Governor Cooper's requests equitable funding for minority-owned businesses. Small business COVID-19 funding and resources. So earlier, a couple months ago, I want to say starting in March and through May, we had a series of webinars with the SBA. SBA administers a lot of disaster fund loans, and there were some grant programs through the CARES Act. So we held a number of webinars on that. And so there are still some resources here, even if it's not an ongoing webinar series right now. So we do still keep that information there. We had a survey of hub vendors and the impact that COVID-19 had on them. And I'm over time by 2 minutes, so I apologize. I'm just trying to make sure everybody can see what some of the benefits of being hubs are. And we list hurricane and natural disaster opportunities there. We do have a list of outreach events that you can see. So today we've got hub certification training. Congratulations, you're in it. Then we've got our job retention grant program. And then next Tuesday, we're having a general contractors virtual lunch and learn. And we've got that Meet the Purchaser event with State Property Office and another certification training August 26th. So we do try to keep information on the website as up to date as we can. If you are ever curious about um, dollar spends in your local area, we have our annual reports for every year going back as far as we have them electronically. And you can see on the goods and services side and the construction side what people have spent and who they spent it with. It doesn't tell you the company name, but it will tell you the agency and it'll tell you the hub category, how much they spent with them, and it'll give you the total hub participation percentage there. So we work a lot of times with cabinet agencies. We are a cabinet agency. Department of Administration, we spent $84 million in 1819. 3 million of that, 3.6 million was with hub vendors. So we had 4.31% participation. We're not satisfied with that. We want to do better. So we are continually looking for hub vendors to work with. So, but you could look at this for school systems or universities or community colleges. So you can see that information there. Well, thank you everybody for coming in and being in on the call. I really appreciate you being here and letting me talk and ramble. And please contact us if you need help with hub certification. Please contact Tiara if you've got questions that the Small Business Center can help you out with. We're here to help you and help you succeed. Tiara, did you want to send us home?
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Like John said, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us here at the Small Business Center. You can request counseling at our www.nashcc.edu/SBC or by phone at 451-8233. Thank you, John, and thank you for everyone for participating today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you're not familiar with Teams, you can click the little red phone icon to hang up. I'm going to hang out for a minute or two in case anybody has some last minute questions.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Hi, this is Tashara. How are you?
Good. Is this Miss
Good.
Ballard?
Yes, it is. Thank you
Okay.
so much. I apologize. I had to take it off mute. Okay. I did send the question as well, but while I was actually going through the slides, because I actually got on the PowerPoint late, but I was listening in. I'm able to register to now on the Action website, and then I also saw due to the time frame of applications, we are able to go back to start those applications because I don't want to start them now, and I have all the documents together, so
Right.
I want to make sure that's okay.
Right. Do you have the PDF of the presentation?
Yes, I went through the slides. I believe
Okay.
it's like 95 slides. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a lot of slides. So basically, there's a three-step process for application. The first part is registering an EVP, which it sounds like you've done.
I have.
Okay. And then you have to submit the application and the required documents. And the presentation will say you have to do that within 30 days of when you registered on EVP. Don't panic too much about that time frame. As long as you are in a reasonable amount of time after you submit the registration, then you can get the application to us and the documents to us. And you can do the application You can email it to us. You could scan it or fax it and send it to us, or you could mail it to us. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get it to us. Does that help?
It does. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was actually reviewing that. And then I have one more question for you. I've been working with the business women of the Carolinas. They actually have an appointment set for me next week to meet with a few young ladies. And I've just been working with the small business centers, SCORE, a lot of different companies trying to provide as much information to get established with understanding the core, foundation of running the business correctly. This won't be any level of conflict of interest or anything like that if you are affiliated with other companies. Is that okay?
It being affiliated with other companies is okay. We want to make sure that you have ownership and you have control of your business. So if somebody else that you're affiliated with makes decisions about how your company is going to run, that's an issue. But if you say, this is where I'm going to be located, this is the type of work I'm going to be doing, this is who I'm going to hire, this is who I'm going to fire, here's how I'm going to spend the money, I'm going to write the check and do that, I'm going to make the plan, and we're going to use that strategy and go in this direction, then that's a pretty good indication that you control your company.
Okay, understood. Yeah, I wanted to make sure there's so many different other resources, and just with all the information that I've been getting all week, which is very helpful. I do see a lot of opportunities with just understanding how to go about it. So thank you so much for that level of clarity. I do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Anything else I can help with?
I believe that's all my questions. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time. You have a great weekend.
All right, you too. Take care.
My pleasure. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye.